So good that we don't have time for our last bite, which is very upsetting. But have no fear, because Shannon Bream and the Fox News at Night team take it from here. I got to rhyme every night, Shannon. That's what I've decided.
I've got
to do a rhyming thing. It's another thing I've got to do right. Okay, so I'm going to work on that.
I have no doubt that you will absolutely nail it, so we'll be standing by.
Have a great show, Shannon.
Thank you, Laura. We begin tonight with a Fox News alert. Both sides playing hardball. One of the chief targets of the special counsel Robert Mueller investigation calling on his legal team to now file a complaint against Mueller and the Justice Department. While President Trump sends a message of his own, a pardon for Paul Manafort is not off the table. Jason Chaffetz on what all of this means for the investigation and for the president. Plus, will the president walk away from a meeting with Putin, one that Russia insists is still going to happen on Saturday in the wake of new aggression by Russia, as Ukraine's president warns of a potential full-out war? And Senator Tim Scott is here, accused of being a fraud on civil rights. We'll get his reaction to that claim, plus his support for a new criminal justice reform bill. It's pushed by the president and opposed by some conservatives. Hello, welcome to Fox News at Night. I'm Shannon Bream in Washington. We have team coverage tonight. Ed Henry is here with the latest on tensions with Russia and Saudi Arabia. But first, let's go to Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge on the latest twists in the Mueller probe. Catherine.
Shannon, new reaction tonight to a possible pardon from the senior Democrat on the Senate Intelligence Committee. Mark Warner tweeting, quote, "This would be a blatant and unacceptable abuse of power," after the president lashed out at the special counsel over its tactics and targets. During an Oval Office interview, President Trump told the New York Post he has not ruled out a pardon for former campaign chairman Paul Manafort. Quote, "It was never discussed, but I wouldn't take it off the table. Why would I take it off the table?" the president said. Mr. Trump also alleged that Manafort, one-time political advisor Roger Stone, and his associate Jerome Corsi were pressured to lie. Quote, "You know, this flipping stuff is terrible. You flip and you lie and you get..." The prosecutors will tell you 99% of the time they can get people to flip. It's rare that they can't. On the Senate floor, a bill to protect special counsel Robert Mueller's investigation was blocked after Democrats and one Republican made their case.
We've already seen the forced resignation of the Attorney General a day after the election. It's clear, therefore, that something has to be done to protect Mr. Mueller's investigation.
Today, the president's legal team singled out special counsel prosecutor Andrew Weissman for allegedly pressuring Manafort and other witnesses. A former prosecutor said the Mueller probe may have overreached, but others disagree.
The underlying thing that they're investigating is politics. It's not crime. And it's not a prosecutor's place to do that.
Manafort is clearly putting all his eggs in the Trump pardon basket. He's gambling, and it's a big gamble that Trump will pardon him.
A source with direct knowledge of the investigation tells Fox News the president's written answers to Mueller are consistent with his public statements. On the June 2016 Trump Tower meeting, which included Manafort, the president tweeted last summer he had no advance knowledge. A status hearing for the Manafort case is now scheduled for Friday in Washington. Shannon.
Catherine Herridge, thank you very much. Well, Robert Mueller is playing hardball with potential key witnesses, and at least one is now threatening to fire back. Roger Stone associate Jerome Corsi tweeting he has instructed his attorneys to file a criminal complaint against Mueller's special counsel and the DOJ for prosecutorial misconduct in his case. Corsi says he rejected an offer from Mueller's office to plead guilty to lying to investigators about his alleged interactions with WikiLeaks.
If the United States has come to it, I'll spend the rest of my life in jail, but I will not swear under God to a lie. I won't do it.
All right, let's discuss with National Security Attorney Bradley Moss and Fox News contributor, former Republican congressman from Utah, Jason Chaffetz. Welcome to you both, gentlemen.
Good evening. How you doing?
Thank you.
I'm very good, but there are just minute-by-minute developments in this Mueller case. So many different people involved. Let's talk about the fact that the president said in the interview with the New York Post that he's not necessarily ruling out a pardon for Manafort. Bradley, what do you make of that?
Oh, the president's been doing this since the beginning. He likes to talk. He likes to go into these conversations about things he might do, he hypothetically could do, and to an extent, he's allowed to do this. It's just political, commentary. But the concern concern, especially given what was gone on in the last couple of days, is whether or not he is dangling a pardon to Paul Manafort. We know that there was this joint defense agreement that continued between the two legal teams even after Paul Manafort struck the plea deal and was supposed to cooperate. We now know that the special counsel is angry with Paul Manafort for allegedly continuing to lie, at least about his business dealings, but what else we don't quite know yet. We're waiting for Friday's hearing. Whether or not the president is doing this just because it's how he likes to talk, or if this is part of a strategy on his part and his legal team to try to dangle a pardon, to try to get Paul Manafort to stay quiet, we're waiting to see, but that cannot be the way this works.
Okay, well, there are a lot of folks out there objecting, saying it's an impeachable offense, that it's unethical and all kinds of other things, but the president has said there's not even been a discussion of it yet, but it's not off the table. Rudy Giuliani says he'll be treated, Paul Manafort, like anybody else who would be up for a potential pardon. Now, in that same New York Post interview, the president said that he believes, by his estimation, that Paul Manafort, Jerome Corsi, and Roger Stone have all been encouraged to lie. Here is Rush Limbaugh's take on that.
If you're a Manafort, what would you do? They're asking you to lie while prosecuting you for lying. If you lie to them, even if they've asked you to, they can come back and later accuse you of lying to. This is an untenable situation and circumstance, and it's all rooted in the fact that they've got nothing.
Jason, what do you think they have?
I don't think they have much. Remember, what they prosecuted and went after Manafort for had nothing to do with Russia and collusion or anything like that. And so I don't think they have much. The president has constitutional opportunities to use a pardon. He's answering a question from a reporter. He's not dangling out there. I think what Senator Warner said was absolutely, totally wrong. The president has the ability to pardon anybody that he wants. And he certainly wasn't barking about that when President Obama, President Clinton, and others were pardoning people. It's just an attack on Donald Trump.
Okay, so in the meantime, we have a number of interviews out there by Jerome Corsi. He says that he's willing to kind of roll the dice at this point, essentially saying that he has been truthful, he has amended where he made mistakes, and that he is not going to play ball with this plea deal. In the meantime, now we know that Manafort is facing the sentencing on Friday because the Mueller team says he has lied about all these things, Bradley, that you mentioned. Where does this leave the president, Bradley?
Well, you know, this is coming to an end here in the sense of all the aspects of the investigation are coming towards the close. We now get into the final parts of whatever may or may not be a collusion angle. We know that the special counsel is going after Roger Stone. That's where Jerome Corsi came into it. If there was any type of criminal conspiracy that involved the Trump campaign, it's likely going to involve that WikiLeaks angle. We know the president's already given the written responses to the special counsel. He's already given those explanations. Whether or not the special counsel follows up remains to be seen. If there's additional questions, we're looking at this probably being done within the next 6 months. And if the president would just let the process play out, odds are he would survive legally, if not also politically.
Well, and so much of this is the court of public opinion. But, Jason, you know probably better and understand this better than any of us. It's one thing when the GOP is running the House. It's going to be another when Democrats are running the House and the investigations that may come up. The president also said in an interview that if they harass him, he thinks it'll be the best thing that ever happens to him. He'll be able to counterpunch him. But he says he'll also declassify FISA warrant applications and other things that would be devastating to the Democrats. But he's holding off until he needs to use those documents. What do you make of that strategy?
Well, look, the Democrats have already foreshadowed. They've named, I think, 83 different investigations. They've presupposed those outcomes. You got to remember that you have the likes of Lindsey Graham and others in the Senate that can play ball with them like that. James Langford, Cory Gardner, other people can go back after this stuff as well. I think that the House is going to do what they can to embarrass Donald Trump on a daily basis, but try to extract documents out of the Department of Justice, even when it was Republicans trying to get it from Republicans, was exceptionally difficult. So I think the president's on solid ground, and I think the Democrats will once again overplay their hand.
Well, a lot of Republicans are calling for him to declassify those things already, so we will see where they end up. Jason and Bradley, thank you both very much.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too.
Thank you.
All right, the Kremlin says President Trump and President Putin are still scheduled to meet in just a few days, despite tough talk from the White House and President Trump in the wake of Russia's aggression against Ukraine. Chief National Correspondent Ed Henry is tracking the very latest developments.
Good to see you,
minute by minute.
Yeah, it's going on and on. President Trump saying he may cancel this weekend meeting with Vladimir Putin on the sidelines of the G20 summit after the Russians seized those Ukrainian ships. But the Kremlin insists all systems are go for a sit-down on Saturday. Putin was taking a hard line today with Ukraine. He made some remarks, blamed them for the firefight off the coast of Crimea. He also downplayed it by claiming it was just a minor incident, even though the Russian military is saying it will be deploying a new surface-to-air missile system in Crimea. That may be why the Ukrainian president is taking this deadly serious. He wore combat fatigues, as you see there, as he spoke to his troops and is warning there could be a full-scale war. Remember, Russia seized Crimea during the Obama administration, and last weekend they captured 24 Ukrainian sailors who have now been ordered to jail for at least 2 months by Russian courts. The Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, Defense Secretary James Mattis, they were on Capitol Hill today for other meetings. Mattis making clear the U.S. believes Russia provoked the latest conflict. Putin rejected that today, insisting it was Ukraine who started it for political reasons. And he says the meeting with President Trump is still on, at least for now, Shannon.
Okay, so today, Secretaries Pompeo and Mattis, they had a briefing on the Hill. It was about many things, but including the Khashoggi murder, Yemen. But a lot of lawmakers, even on both sides of the aisle, not thrilled.
It got pretty explosive, and it was not just Democrats angry at the administration for only sending Pompeo and Mattis to the Hill to brief about the murder of the Saudi columnist. Republican Lindsey Graham was also quite upset that CIA Director Gina Haspel did not come up and stand behind the CIA assessment of that murder. That's raising questions about whether the administration was hiding her, keeping her from senators, and Graham threatened to hold up all Senate business unless he gets a briefing directly from the CIA, though the president seemed to get some cover today from Secretary Mattis. Watch this exchange.
Members of this body have a right to hear from Director Haspel, and her absence today speaks volumes about the White House's intention for congressional oversight and Saudi Arabia.
We have no smoking gun that the Crown Prince was involved, not the intelligence community or anyone else. There is no smoking gun.
But a bipartisan group of senators seemed to reject that. They voted 63 to 37 to bring up another measure in a few days to limit the president's war powers in Yemen. They want to rein in U.S. involvement in the Saudi military campaign against the Houthi rebels in Yemen. They want to limit the U.S. role to just battling al-Qaeda there. The question now is if this procedural vote was just a chance for everyone to vent, and perhaps the administration can block the next vote on the grounds that, as the president has been claiming, the Saudis are a key U.S. ally, despite this big stain. Shannon, we have not heard the last of it. Lindsey Graham was fired up. He's a key ally of the president, yet he's saying he's mad about this.
Yeah, he is. He doesn't plan to back down. And we know there's bipartisan anger, so, yeah, not going to settle down. Thank you, Ed.
Good to see you, Shannon.
You too. All right, amid the initial furor on Capitol Hill aimed at Saudi Arabia in the wake of the killing of journalist Jamal Khashoggi, a delegation of evangelical leaders traveled to Riyadh and actually met with the Saudi Crown Prince. They talked to him about this. That group was led by our next guest, New York Times bestselling author and author of the forthcoming novel, The Persian Gamble, Joel Rosenberg. Joel, good to have you with us tonight.
Good to be with you, Shannon. Thank you.
Okay, so we see the pictures there of you all meeting. The Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, he took a lot of heat from people smiling and being in the picture with the Crown Prince around the time this was going on. You all were there as well. You know, people have concerns about you sitting down and having a conversation with him, as many report that the U.S. intelligence has determined he does have a direct link. What can you tell us about your conversation with him?
Sure, Shannon, I'm happy to do it. As you know, because you and I have talked about it for the last several years, I've been invited as a novelist, but also as an evangelical leader, to bring delegations of evangelical Christians to now 4 different Arab, Sunni, Muslim countries, Jordan, Egypt, the United Arab Emirates, and now Saudi Arabia. We were invited by the Saudis months before the murder of Jamal Khashoggi. We had accepted then, and in the midst of the whole furor, an understandable furor over the horrific, sickening, ghastly murder of Khashoggi, we did consider not going. But we also believe this was the first time that the Saudis have ever invited evangelical Christians to come and talk about issues that are important to us and to them. So we continued forward. But we did begin our 2-hour meeting with very direct, very frank questions about Khashoggi.
And did you feel like the answers that you got were to your satisfaction, that he wasn't directly involved? Because I want to play a little something that Democratic Senator Dick Durbin had to say about what he's heard so far.
There are many of us who believe that this execution of Khashoggi in Istanbul could never have taken place without the knowledge and direction of the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. That is a fact which this administration has never been willing to acknowledge, and we are asked to accept at face value that this sort of murder took place without his knowledge. I don't accept it.
And he's not the only one not buying it, Joel.
Right. Right. No, obviously, and my friend Lindsey Graham obviously feels very similarly. Look, let me tell you what he told us. The Crown Prince was very clear. He said this is a heinous crime. That's the phrase he used, a heinous crime. He called it a terrible tragedy and crime. And he said that we've arrested people. We are prosecuting people. People will face justice for this. And he noted that when Iran or Russia or Turkey, when people are killed in those countries and the government has some involvement or is perceived to have, he said, do people get arrested there? Do people get prosecuted? Do people get fired from senior positions? No, I'm doing that. Now, I can't tell you, Shannon, whether he was involved or not. He said he wasn't. But, you know, what do we have right now? Right now, as you and I speak, we don't have anyone in the CIA on the record as saying that MBS, the Crown Prince, was definitely the one who ordered the hit. What we have is two people on the record, the defense secretary and the former CIA director, now Secretary of State, Pompeo, saying there is no smoking gun and no direct evidence. So that's all we have to go on. What I'm concerned about is that the Senate is getting ready to overthrow, in a sense, the U.S.-Saudi relationship based on an analysis, not on hard data. And that is risky. The last time the U.S. tried to push aside a leader that they weren't that friendly with for a season was Hosni Mubarak, and we got the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. That was a huge mistake.
Yeah, and it's a very delicate balance between human rights and the U.S. being a moral compass for the world and maintaining relationships that also benefit our national interest. Secretary Mattis saying today, we are seldom free to work with unblemished partners. So we'll keep an eye on it. We know you will as well. Come back if you have an update. Great to see you, Joel.
Appreciate it, Shannon. Thank you.
All right, the vice president breaks the Senate tie and a Senate record tonight, all over a judicial nominee critics accuse of having a record of white supremacy. Now, Senator Tim Scott is facing backlash over his vote. Plus, the White House wants to get that bipartisan criminal justice reform bill passed now, but it is shaping up to be a tough sell in the Senate.
There are many senators who are very concerned about the public safety implications of this legislation.
Right now, Senator Tim Scott is here right after the break. We're going to ask him about all of these hot issues. With a tie-breaking vote from Vice President Mike Pence, one of President Trump's most controversial judicial nominees narrowly cleared a hurdle in the Senate today. Every Democratic senator is opposing the nomination of Thomas Farr to a district court in North Carolina, arguing that Farr has supported several measures that disenfranchise African-American voters. In just minutes, Senator Tim Scott will be here. He was the last lawmaker to cast his vote today, and he's facing backlash over it. Some are calling him a civil rights fraud. How's he going to respond? Stick around for that. Well, with a lame duck congressional session in full swing, the White House is making a last-ditch attempt to get a sweeping criminal justice reform bill passed, but there are serious hurdles. Chief Congressional Correspondent Mike Emanuel has more on the behind-the-scenes effort. Mike?
Shannon, good evening. Senate Judiciary Chairman Chuck Grassley is selling this bipartisan bill as the first criminal justice reform in a generation.
It deals with both the front end and the back end. But more importantly, the things that they brought up are already things that can be done to reduce incarceration or shorten sentences to a certain extent. But we're very careful to make sure that drug kingpins, people that are violent criminals, can't make access to this legislation.
President Trump and his allies are behind this plan to reduce federal mandatory minimum sentences. It would also support programs aimed at reducing recidivism, and it would provide relief for those who received harsh sentences for drug offenses. Arkansas Republican Senator Tom Cotton is leading the charge against it. Cotton says this bill went from a prison reform measure to a sentencing reduction bill.
So this bill would let many sex offenders, child abusers, and other violent felons out of prison early. Once the proponents of this bill finally release their text after months of keeping it hidden, we simply asked the Department of Justice, would these sex offenders be released early from prison? And the Department of Justice answered, as a factual matter, yes, they would be.
Some key Democrats are urging their GOP colleagues to seize the moment with at least some bipartisan support on this issue.
That for Congress to fail to deal with criminal justice reform would simply be absolutely indictable, not criminally, but as a matter of public policy. Congress really owes it to the people to do something.
Chairman Grassley insists he has the votes to pass this measure, but it's not entirely clear if Majority Leader Mitch McConnell will take it up, since he does not like legislation that divides the Republican conference. Shannon?
That is tricky. Mike Emanuel, thank you very much. So is Senator Cotton right? Will this bill, supported by the president, allow sex offenders and violent felons to get out of jail early? What's true? What's fact? What's fiction? Let's ask Republican Senator from South Carolina, Tim Scott, who is co-sponsoring the bill. Senator, great to have you with us.
Thank you. It's good to be here with you.
Okay, so you know how your fellow GOP Senator Tom Cotton feels about this. I know that you think there are a lot of positives. What about these potential negatives that he cited?
At the end of the day, we have an expanding list of categories of folks who cannot be eligible for this package. We've added every classification that Tom brings up. We'll add, and we'll continue to add some more if necessary. The reality of it is that we have a chance to reduce recidivism. What that means is we're increasing public safety. Today, after 5 years, 77% of the inmates are back in jail. We have proven programs that reduces that number. The reason why President Trump, who is not soft on crime whatsoever, supports this legislation is because he understands that by reducing recidivism, we can see safer communities. South Carolina is a classic example of that. We've closed 7 state prisons. Our estimated population of 30,000 prisoners down to 21,000. Why? Because we've reduced recidivism by having programs designed to force or to encourage inmates to participate in that actually helps us reduce their recidivism by increasing their readiness for the real world, by giving them the job skills, GED programs, and other programs that we have been able to prove reduces the likelihood of reoffending.
So not just a vicious cycle. Now, DOJ did tell Politico, an analyst said to them that the measure doesn't contain any exclusions for people convicted of the crimes that Senator Cotton refers to, and that all offenders would be eligible to receive more good time credits as a result of the bill. So is it your representation that the bill is still a work in progress, that some exclusions will be added?
Absolutely. We're working on it today. What we had was a base bill that we were continuing to add excluded classes. The classes that Tom asked DOJ to take a look at already are eligible for good time credits. So the question was, does the bill provide enhanced good time credits? And the answer is it does provide more certainty and more flexibility for the BOP to decide who gets what. But we put those 4 classes that Tom Cotton had questions about on the excluded list.
Well, that's why people have discussions and raise their concerns.
This has been a good process.
So you can have some interaction on that. Okay, I want to ask you as well about Thomas Farr, who is a judicial nominee. You voted today procedurally just to move him forward, not on the merits of whether or not he should be a federal judge. You know that there are plenty of objections to him. The NAACP says he needs to withdraw his nomination. He's the architect of the worst voter suppression law in the country. After you voted to move him forward today, at least to the next consideration level, News One had this. Their headline said, Senate's only black Republican, Tim Scott, sells out in vote on Trump's racist judge nominee. Jennifer Rubin, who is a self-described conservative blogger over at the Washington Post, said, what a fraud he is on civil rights, referring to you.
Yeah, hogwash. If I took the time to respond to every negative criticism that I get from the African-American community, whether it's NAACP, NAN, or some other group, then I would spend all my time only responding to the criticism. The fact of the matter is, if there's a civil rights issue, we've just talked about it, it's having prison reform actually see the light of day and get passed. It's the work that I've done on the Opportunity Zone legislation, which brings more money back into the poor communities that I grew up in a single-parent household. So it's talking about ways to improve education, which I'm working on, which I think is one of the greatest civil rights issues of our generation. We're looking for ways to make sure that every single zip code has quality educational options for parents. The fact of the matter is that we can agree to disagree on a specific nominee. I don't remember all those folks coming out and saying, good job, when I shot down an administration appointment to the courts just about 2 or 3 months ago. So I'm going to take my hits, and frankly, that comes with the territory. At the end of the day, my goal is to do the right thing. One of the reasons why I called and spoke to the author of the DOJ memo from 28 years ago was to understand and appreciate what role Tom Farr played in the Helms campaign. If he was the architect of that nasty racist campaign, I would have been a no without any question. What I found so far from appointees of the Obama administration to my conversations with the author of the memo is that he was, in fact, not the architect of the campaign, and that the character witnesses from the Obama administration coming forward on behalf of Tom Farr have been pretty strong. But I am continuing my research because the thing I hold myself accountable for is doing the right thing, not the politically acceptable, not the politically expedient, but the right thing based on the evidence. And so far, the evidence is pointing me towards the vote that I took today, and I will continue this journey through the night and into tomorrow and make the best decision I can and sleep with a good conscience.
All right. Well, you have proven that before on difficult votes where maybe the White House or your party wanted you and you voted your conscience
Absolutely.
as a no. So we'll watch tomorrow. The vote is at noon. In the meantime, thanks very much for stopping in.
Thank
and we'll
you.
follow the criminal justice bill as well.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
Thanks, Senator.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, breaking tonight, DHS says a member of the extremely violent MS-13 street gang admits he hid in the migrant caravan so he could reach the U.S. border. That story's coming up. U.S. officials confirming tonight an active member of the deadly MS-13 street gang has been arrested with the migrant caravan just east of the port of entry in Calexico. Jose Villalobos Hobel of Honduras apparently planned to apply for asylum and cross into the U.S. at the border. Once he was detained on Saturday, DHS says he admitted to being a part of MS-13 and traveling with the caravan as a way to get into the U.S. He'll reportedly be returned to Honduras. Well, adult film actress Stormy Daniels says her attorney, Michael Avenatti, sued President Trump for defamation on her behalf without her permission. Daniels tells the Daily Beast Avenatti started a fundraising website to raise money for her legal expenses without telling her. She also says he refuses to tell her how the money is being spent. Daniels says she's not decided whether to keep Avenatti as her lawyer. Well, Justice Brett Kavanaugh back in the headlines today for his return to his other favorite role in life, Coach K of his daughter's basketball team. But that's not sitting well with some of his critics on the left. Correspondent Trace Gallagher is looking into the details. Hello, Trace.
Hi, Shannon. An article in the Washington Post itself was very run-of-the-mill. It simply stated that Brett Kavanaugh, the Supreme Court justice, is back coaching his daughter's basketball team. It does mention in the article the sexual assault allegations against him, but mostly in the context of Kavanaugh lamenting the possibility that the uncorroborated smears could prevent him from coaching. Here's what Kavanaugh said at the time. Watch.
I love coaching more than anything I've ever done in my whole life. But thanks to what some of you on this side of the committee have unleashed, I may never be able to coach again.
So the uproar isn't about the article itself. It's about where the Washington Post placed the article, which is under its public safety tag, along with an incident at Walter Reed Medical Center not being an active shooter and a child who was hit by a bus. A father coaching his daughter appears to be out of place, and conservatives made their displeasure known with comments like, quote, the gutter journalism that still surrounds reports about Brett Kavanaugh make me want to tear my hair out, and quoting, well, it's official now, the Inquirer, The Onion have more credible headlines and articles than the WAPO and the New York Times. The Washington Post is defending itself, saying that stories written by the author, legal affairs reporter Ann E. Marimow, automatically default to the public safety category. The Post goes on to say this obviously is one that should not have been there. And in fairness, other stories written by the author, including one about adoption and one about Robert Mueller, also ended up under public safety. But this is also the paper that ran headlines during the confirmation hearings like these, quote, we were Brett Kavanaugh's drinking buddies. We don't think he should be confirmed, end quote. Brett Kavanaugh's anger may be backfiring. So even if the story was simply misplaced, you can see why conservatives might be a bit skeptical. And by the way, we should mention Shannon Kavanaugh's team lost in the final round of that tournament.
All right.
Shannon.
Well, he's going to be there coaching him on, it appears. Either way, Trace, right. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Well, First Lady Melania Trump is speaking out after days of criticism over her White House Christmas decor. Tonight. President Trump leading a countdown for the lighting of the national Christmas tree tonight. First Lady Melania Trump hit the switch to illuminate the decked-out spruce in President's Park that is just south of the White House. A number of country stars came to perform along with Pershing's Own, the U.S. Army Band, and it is freezing in D.C. tonight. Looks beautiful. All right, First Lady Melania Trump is speaking out after days of criticism over her Christmas decorations. Correspondent Ellison Barber has more from the First Lady.
For the second time since moving into the White House, First Lady Melania Trump unveiled Christmas decorations. And for the second time, the decorations were mocked and turned into internet memes, comparing the decorations to everything from The Handmaid's Tale to Stanley Kubrick's classic horror film The Shining to a car wash. There were some write-ups pointing out the Twitter backlash. Media outlets like USA Today, Time, and HuffPost. Today, the First Lady responded during an event at Liberty University.
They would like to portray different stories and focus on different unimportant stuff, really. And I'm here to shine the light on important stuff and talk about the things that I can help.
Ms. Trump spoke about the decorations after she was asked about those criticisms.
Everybody has a different taste. I think they look fantastic.
But she traveled to Virginia to speak about something else.
The addiction can begin with something as innocent as injury. It could be a sports injury or from some kind of an accident.
Opioid abuse is one of the 3 pillars in the First Lady's Be Best initiative. The other 2 pillars are well-being and social media. The First Lady has come under fire for the initiative, with some saying it's hypocritical. After all, her husband is well known for his tweets and using them to aggressively punch back at critics. When I spoke with the First Lady's office, they said her comments about the decorations speak for themselves, but they also told me they aren't particularly concerned with the criticisms. One of the First Lady's top aides told me the critiques are coming from what she described as left-wing media. She said the decorations are beautiful and they're just excited for the public to take part in a special tradition. Shannon?
All right, Ellison, thank you very much. Now, Melania is not the only Trump woman in the spotlight tonight. First daughter, presidential advisor Ivanka Trump, is defending her use of a private email account, saying it cannot be compared to what happened with then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton and her emails in a private server. Time now for tonight's Power Panel to debate both of these big stories. Fox News contributor Leslie Marshall, Fox News political analyst Gianno Caldwell, and White House correspondent for the Daily Caller, Sagar Anjetti. Thank you all for being with us tonight.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Okay, I want to read what Vanity Fair said today, or said this week about these Christmas decorations. The headline was, Melania Trump's White House Christmas has a touch of menace once again. Goes on to say, if the sense of menace blowing through the ornamental branches last year came from what we didn't know about Melania, this year that feeling comes from what we do know. Gianno.
Oh my God, we gotta take her to jail because this is so horrific. First and foremost, these decorations were used to honor military families, and as I've read the reporting, a lot of these military families actually participated in the decorations. I think this is another case of anybody that's close to Trump, whether they are involved in politics at all or not, are targets. And this is another problematic case of that. People have been attacking Melania Trump since she entered the White House, and this is something that I think we should definitely back from and certainly make mention of the hypocrisy here.
Okay, Dan Gaynor of the Media Research Center says this: according to the juvenile style mavens that dominate the lefty media, Melania's Christmas style is somehow spooky or deeply haunted. Compare that to how the Washington Post described Michelle Obama as a, quote, pro in dressing up the place, whose decorations delivered her own steady recognition of military service. Leslie, double standard?
Well, I don't think there's a double standard, Shannon, because there's certainly been enough criticism, and continues to be, of former First Ladies Michelle Obama, Hillary Clinton. Unfortunately and sadly, and I don't agree with it, it seems to come with the territory of being First Lady. If people don't like on the left your husband on the right, or vice versa, they attack the First Lady. I want to go on the record and say I actually like the red Christmas trees. I'm a minimalist. I feel they're a little bit modern and funky. And quite frankly, we really shouldn't be attacking any First Lady for decorating the White House, because it's petty and there are much more important issues to discuss.
I mean, Sagar, listen, there are so many women's magazines out there. Like, I can't even read most of them anymore, because I don't care if it's left or right. Like, I just don't want to read politics if I'm looking for like lip gloss and evening gowns. I mean, but these magazines fawn over the left and just deride the right all the time. I mean, Melania, Whether you are left, right, or center, I mean, physically a stunningly beautiful, fashionable woman. And I saw recently a list of the 100 most fashionable in the world. She did not even make the top 100, Sagar.
Yeah, you're right. This is a little bit out of my league here. But in my discussion with some fellow culture correspondents, what they tell me is it is a little baffling that you have a former supermodel as First Lady who hasn't graced the cover or any of these best dressed lists when Michelle Obama was actually turned into a fashion icon under the Obama administration. Overall, you know, Melania has said in the past that she thinks she's one of the most bullied people in the world, and I broadly tend to agree with that.
I mean, people mocked her for saying that, Sagar.
Yeah, I'm sure. I know that they did, but this is a perfect example. She's trying to shine a light on, you know, on infants who are born addicted to opioids because of the choices of their parents, and we're talking about red Christmas trees. And I think it's a sad time whenever Christmas decorations are becoming part of political discourse, but that's where we are in this country right now.
I want you all to weigh in too as well about the news that Ivanka Trump had used a lot of personal email back and forth discussing things regarding travel and being contacted by White House officials and others. Here's what she said on Good Morning America.
So everything has been preserved, everything's been archived. There just is no equivalency between the two things. My emails have not been deleted, nor was there anything of substance, nothing confidential.
But, Jano, I'll start with you. I mean, people say, listen, this is something that the president has hammered Hillary Clinton on for years. An unforced error?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, I think a lot of us love Ivanka Trump. We think she's poised. I think she's graceful, 100%. Now, these are a couple of things that we got to keep in mind. No, this was not the same as Hillary Clinton. No, there was no classified material that we are aware of that was on these emails. And it was also said that she used this email to transition into the job. So when I hear that, I'm saying, oh, okay, it kind of makes sense. But what I do realize is, generally speaking, when there's a transition taking place, you get a transition government email, which you should utilize to do this government business until you get an official White House email. So knowing what President Trump and candidate Trump did in terms of Hillary Clinton, how he made mention of her emails on a consistent basis, this is certainly something she should have never done, and I'm sure it's something that she won't do any further.
Well, Cheryl Atkinson, an investigative reporter, tweeted this. She says, I'm not equating Ivanka's email to Hillary establishing a private server for all government business, destroying emails after subpoenaed, etc. But for those talking about possible charge against Ivanka, wasn't that matter all settled? Since the Hillary decision did not to prosecute, even if Ivanka or Trump were to go so far as Hillary did and set up a private server, mishandled classified info, destroyed subpoena emails, we've determined that that's not a crime. Or is it only a crime if it's not Hillary? Quickly, Leslie, then Sagar.
I would say that we could ask the same question to say, is it only a crime if it is Hillary? I didn't hear chants, and I don't hear chants of lock her up, although some people may do that on Twitter regarding Ivanka. Look, she works in the White House. Her father is president. She works for the president. She's part of the presidential staff. Approximately 80% of what comes by her desk is classified, and with all the hullabaloo that her father, his campaign administration have made, and those on the right, she should have known better. It was reckless, just like it was when Hillary Clinton.
Quick final word, Sagar.
Yeah, we may not be hearing lock her up, but we are definitely hearing subpoena out of the House Democrats. And unfortunately, this is an unforced error by Ms. Trump, and the House Democrats are going to have a field day. They're going to be subpoenaing these records. They're going to use it for all of its worth, and it's going to be a headache for the White House for a long time to come.
All right, Sagar, Giano, and Leslie, thank you all very much.
Thanks, Shannon.
Thank you. Albie has more from the city of Republic.
Good man, I appreciate what you're doing. In tiny Republic, Washington, Police Chief Lauren Culp is a local celebrity after saying he would not enforce the law, or one state law, Initiative 1639, a sweeping gun control measure.
I felt that it was such a blatant disregard for constitutional rights that I felt like I had no choice but to stand up for the people that I serve.
The new gun law bars 18 to 20-year-olds from buying semi-automatic rifles and makes it a potential felony if your gun ends up in the wrong hands. It also creates enhanced background checks and mandatory firearms training. Voters across Washington state passed the measure 59 to 41%, but in Ferry County, nearly 3 out of 4 voters opposed it. Mayor Elbert Kuntz is considering an ordinance proposed by Chief Culp to make Republic a sanctuary city for gun rights.
Everybody in Republic has a gun. We don't have a giant crime rate because nobody in their right mind is going to come to a house where people have guns and know how to use them.
When Chief Culp announced his sanctuary city proposal, he got a standing ovation. In Seattle, the reaction is very different.
Their job is to enforce the laws that are passed, not necessarily to just the ones that they approve of personally.
The Second Amendment Foundation, along with the NRA, sued to strike down the new state law. Its leader sees poetic justice in gun rights advocates getting into the sanctuary business, up until now reserved for illegal immigrants.
In politics, there's always a pushback. When you try to take people's rights away from them, they stand up and they rebel, and that's what you're seeing in Republic Washington.
The City Council will discuss the gun rights sanctuary city ordinance at its next meeting on Monday and could vote on it before the state law takes effect in January. The state's Attorney General, a Democrat who supports gun control, says he'll review the ordinance if it passes. Shannon?
Dan Springer in Washington, thank you. And by the way, along with the tree lighting in D.C., New York's Rockefeller Center Christmas tree was lit tonight as well. Now, did you ever wonder what happens to the tree after the season? Well, the Rockefeller Center tree is donated to Habitat for Humanity, and that organization mills that huge tree into lumber. It's then used to build homes for the